So today I want to review the Oscar-nominated short film Please Hold. And in my opinion, this is the best short film and the strongest short film to come out of that class because it is something with very strong cinematic qualities, and it's also very experimental in a couple of ways. And also, it's the only film that's a sci-fi. And actually, when you look at a lot of the Oscar nominated short films, usually they're dramas or black comedies, but mostly dramas about social issues. And and I think that, one thing that happens with the Oscars that they do very, very poorly is they don't have other genres usually win. Like, I think if you wanted to make a horror film in an Oscar nominated live action short, it would never win. If you wanted to make an erotic movie, well, you can kind of get away with it if it's like a drama or whatever. But sci-fi is also another genre which is hugely, hugely, hugely underrepresented. So, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the movie. Please Hold. What happens in that film is that there's this kid in LA in the future, and he's just eating a banana, walking down the street, going to work. And then a drone shows up, and a drone says that he has to put on. There's like a drone with like police that's like white, has police officer lights on it, red, white, and blue flashing in LA, and I think it says LAPD, so it's like in the future, and it tells him to please put on the handcuffs, and he says I didn't do anything, and then he says like then this drone says please comply, and it pulls out like a taser and whatever, so he just knows he has to comply. Automatically, that makes you think of like those giant robots in RoboCop, where it's almost like you have to comply in a certain amount of time, or else you're either going to get destroyed. In RoboCop, in this film, you're going to get tased really badly. So I'm not sure what happens to him. I think the drone, they don't show it off. They showed off. It happens off camera, so I think the drone maybe follows him down to the police station, or follows him down to the police station. So that way he has to walk all the way down there, so he's not getting out of it, versus actual people arresting him. And that's one of the themes, is what happens when you have AI versus actually a police force. And the lack of just meeting a person and being person to person, especially when it comes to the criminal justice system. So he goes down this long hallway that makes you think of a Stanley Kubrick film, just like this long symmetrical hallway, and he goes into a room. And what happens is that he makes a phone call to get out of jail, and it's like $3 per minute. So what happens is he doesn't see that in the long text before you say agree. And then what happens is he's just waiting. He was just waiting for somebody to respond to him, and they don't respond to him. So he kind of thinks it's a free call because he doesn't read the text. So he sleeps in bed, and then he realizes that when he wakes up that actually, because it was $3 a minute, they spent close to $540 on a phone call that nobody responded to. So what he has to do is that another big part of it is that there's a menu screen that gives you a bunch of different options. So one of the options is that, it says that your trial's in 90 days. So you can plead guilty. So your options are to plead not guilty, where you go to trial and you could face 50 years, or you can plead non-guilty and face 3 to 5 years. As an option. There's also a thing for lawyers. You need $10,000 to talk to a certain lawyer, or you need or you can get a DA, a public defender, so you can pay nothing, but you have to pay for the phone call. And then there's another option where you can sign up for jobs, and he decides up for knitting, and also the other thing that happens to him is that they take his phone away, when he goes into the jail cell. So he does have a couple of issues. Obviously, he has no money now, so he has to take the knitting job. So he gets really, really good at it over a period of time. And I believe he's in that cell for 90 days, close to 90 days. So he needs to, so each time he knits, he gets a couple of cents to make a phone call. So he eventually gets enough money to call his mom and dad. And then his mom and dad send him $10,000. And then what happens is that he's able is that he gets $10,000 over time, and then he's kind of like saying yes, yes when he's talking to the lawyer that he can get out of it. But the problem was that he presses a button to say he actually loses hope at one point, so he presses a button to plead guilty, so he can get like 4 or 5 years. So it's kind of funny because what happens is he's yelling yes, yes while that option is being chosen, which is he can plead guilty for 5 years, and he's being recorded. So unfortunately, they did not do something in the movie where they had him accidentally say yes and then go to jail for 5 years. Because I would felt like if they did that, then that would just kind of be building up a character that you feel sorry for, and ultimately just fucking them over in the end, just one more time. So it would kind of feel, I don't know, it would just feel like, it would feel like giving the middle finger a little too much. So he's able to get out of jail and live his life, and then also he loses his job. He originally worked at like a sandwich place, I believe, or like or a retail store. I don't remember, but also he had to get a job with a knitting company. So like the after prison job he was able to get. And there's a lot of themes within this. I think that before I get into the themes, I want to talk about it, that they do a lot of like work with synthesizers. I like synthesizers. I'm actually planning to work with the synthesizer that I have here, the Moog. So I'm happy to see a movie with using synthesizers as well, and they do a great job with it. I also, like as I said, I'm happy to see a sci-fi film. That one, that his cell is like has a lot of orange and greens. So like obviously orange and greens are contrasting colors on the color spectrum, and then also like his cell like is very like small and confided. So you kind of feel like it shows the isolation he's feeling. They do a lot of like still frame shots where they show him like doing things in fast motion, like using the bathroom, his day-to-day life, and then also knitting and becoming good at knitting because he knows that's his only form of survival. So in addition to good cinematography and good art production and finding really good locations, they do a really, really great job of just like of editing as well. Like fast motion, different reactions, also just like fast motion, but doing jump cuts, match cuts and jump cuts as well. So this was definitely very, very well made, and a lot of films don't have that experimentation, and that's why I kind of think it should win, because it alludes to classic films like RoboCop. There was some elements of comedy, there were some elements of like tragedy, and there was like some very experimental editing versus any other film. I think any other film was just very basic in their editing style. You just edited just to tell a story, but this one felt more like you were editing to set the genre and the tone and the mood. So the editing was very, very strong in this. And I know that it's extremely rare, but some short films have actually been nominated for Best Editing. And obviously I think that it would be cool if this was nominated for Best Editing with the regular winners. But that's extremely rare. That's only happened, I think, maybe once or twice with the Oscars. But I think that there's a lot of different themes. I think the first thing is like what happens when we rely on artificial intelligence versus actual people. Like sometimes I get frustrated with credit card companies, and I get frustrated with the bank, and I also get frustrated with Amazon and other places, and even like the USPS and like Passport Agency and like and other agencies as well, where they'll do whatever they can to make sure you do not talk to a real person, or they'll hang up the call with the automated system saying that we want to know what your call is about. But if you articulate it in any type of way, it'll be like, I don't understand, until you actually talk to a real person who can understand. So when that becomes a legal situation where it impacts somebody's life, for the next, in his case, 90 days, where it could have been the next 5 years to the next 50 years, it becomes really, really bad. And obviously I think that they try to say that easily this was a character who didn't commit a crime, and he almost has to settle for it. And ultimately, there's a lot of people in jail nowadays, and that could be in the future as well, that have to plea bargain to, 4 or 5 years versus 50 years. Or sometimes they do the plea bargain, and then they say, nope, not the 6 years, maybe it's the 25 years, or maybe it's the 50 years. So ultimately, plea bargains are there to take advantage of people who don't know the legal system, or they would rather, or they think they're getting a small burn, but actually, a fast burn versus a slow burn. So I think that was really good. I also kind of understand that the main character, he did, with his accent, he did have a Hispanic accent, and possibly he could be Hispanic. So it obviously is kind of an allegory for how minorities are treated with the legal system. And then also too that obviously because he has to make clothing, he has to put a lot of money. He has to and he doesn't really, and he has to figure things out a lot. So there's a lot of allegories to almost it's a gamble with somebody's life, because it's all about making sure he can communicate everything with the phone call. And then the next thing is also how when he doesn't read the text, and then there's other things that he just has to figure out the hard way. It is kind of also like with laws and legality, where a lot of normal people just don't understand the laws and the rules, but the lawyers too, and the legal system does. And then also too, because I know this happens to some people, there are some lawyers who won't do a good job because they know that they're just there for a paycheck or whatever. And so, there's a lot of different allegories, and it's also kind of forewarning, because more than likely our legal system could become this. Get rid of the human beings and make it artificial, and then also make it unfair in a way with computers and whatever, so you get more people in jail to make money. The same way, slot machines and other gambling machines are rigged, so certain times you win, or sometimes they know that on a surveillance camera they see who's plugging it in, so they can see a white guy or an older person play the slots, and they're like, we want that older person to win because they don't have a lot of time left, or they're white, we want them to win. But if we see a minority or a young person play the game, we don't want that person to win, because we don't like minorities winning, because there is some racism. And then the other thing is they assume that you're young, so they want to make sure that you kind of come back and blow more money, you have more chances to make more money in your life to recuperate and come back. So they rather have an older person win because they don't have a lot of time left, and they want the good stories from older people so they can keep coming back and whatever. So I think that there's a lot of different themes with what happens when you rely on artificial intelligence for legal counsel and other things like that, especially when it becomes a matter of life and death. And I think this is a very good short film. Police Hold is very well made. It should become, if I believe, the first sci-fi short film to win Best Live Action Short. I do not think it's going to win. There's this one called Take and Run, which I think will win because of the different themes that are in this. And usually it's not just... It's usually not just about how good the film is technically. It's also about the themes you put in there. And I think even though there is discrimination against minorities, there is in the legal system being corrupt, and the legal system taking advantage of people or first time offenders who don't know a lot about the laws. If this film came out a few years ago with Black Lives Matter, and then actually the main character was an African American, automatically this would win because it ties into more of the issues in contemporary America. Now we're more concerned about COVID, and now the Ukraine and issues in the Middle East and women's issues. And that's why I think that my prediction is going to be Take and Run, even though this is the film Police Hold who should win Best Live Action Short.